What is happening, everybody? Welcome into a brand new episode of Crossed Up. Anthony Sanfilippo's here. I'm Bob Wankel. Anthony, I feel rejuvenated. It's a Tuesday morning. Phillies play 2 games against the Atlanta Braves. Yesterday at Citizens Bank Park, a heartbreaker in the opener, one of those frustrating losses. We've seen a lot of them from this team lately, but then they bounce back, as they often do, in the nightcap, get the doubleheader split. And then that brings us to this conversation this morning. Phillies have 2 more left against the Braves. And I have to tell you, there were issues yesterday. You see the pitching weaknesses. That stuff continues to be, I think, pretty concerning. And we'll jump into all that in a little bit. But my primary takeaway yesterday was, you know what? I feel like that this team actually acquitted themselves pretty well. Now, they got to finish the deal. And when I say finish the deal, I think they got to win one more. Like, I feel like you got to split here because, oh, by the way, that wild card race continues to tighten. But this did not look like a team yesterday that was outclassed by the Atlanta Braves. And I think that's important.
Well, it's incredibly important, Bob. And you basically just kind of got into the genesis of my story that is, well, hopefully by the time you are listening to this is on Crossing Broad, which it's not up as we're recording it, but it's early yet because it's all city all the time right now. But it was an important 2 games to me. And look, it's just the beginning. There's got to be 2 more in this series and then 3 more next week with Atlanta. And, you might look at it and say, well, geez, they're not, why does it matter how they play against the Braves? Because this is a team that you're going to have to beat if you want to get back to where they were last year. You just have to. Okay. You're going to go through this team. And here's the thing, Bob, and I have this ready to roll because I thought it was important from this perspective. If you let's start the season beginning of June, right? Because that's when the Phillies started turning their season around. Anything that happened before that was, the division was close. Everybody, the Mets were good back then, right? I mean, there was a whole different world. But since the beginning of June, the Braves have had 19 series, all told, okay, against teams that are currently in the playoff race or were at the time were considered a top team, maybe kind of falling out of it after the fact. Okay, in those 19 series, the Braves went 35-12 against those teams. They outscored those teams 293 to 199. Okay, they murdered these teams on the whole. They basically ended the Yankee season. They basically ended the Mets season. They blew out the Marlins 29-7 in a sweep earlier this year. They crushed the Twins. Milwaukee, they beat them 5 out of 6. Okay, they have been murdering these. The only team really that I was actually a little surprised by this. Arizona's 500 against them. Mm-hmm. But they crushed the Dodgers in LA. The first 3 games of that series, and then Dodgers came back and got the finale. But they've murdered everybody. And the one team that they haven't murdered this year, and I said this on the last episode, is the Phillies. And so to see the Phillies yesterday play those games, and yes, they are a flawed team, but they basically said to the Braves, you punch us, we punch right back. And we can punch with you for the entirety of a game, and we'll see who's still standing in the end. It's going to be, if they play each other in a 5-game series, it's going to be a heavyweight fight. And what I wrote today, and I'll say one more thing, what I wrote today, because I think you're going to react to this. There are, in my mind, only 2 teams who can go to the World Series out of the National League, and it's the Braves and the Phillies. and I'll tell you why later, why I think the Dodgers aren't. But yes, there are 2 teams out of the National League. It's either going to be the Braves or the Phillies.
I love it. That is a bold statement. So we do not like the Los Angeles Dodgers on this show. I will say, in light of what has happened there with that situation and the pitching staff taking a hit, that's a huge deal. All right. Well, I'll react to that statement in a second, but I want to go back to something you said a moment ago, talking about you throw a punch and we'll punch you back. It's 8-4 yesterday. And, the Braves kind of impose their will. They flex like they always do. They're running away from the Phillies. And it's not the Harper home run, which we can talk about because obviously it's another Bryce Harper moment, and this guy's unbelievable, and he's done it 3 times now in 3 weeks. It's just crazy. But the Trey Turner home run for me is the one that, like, just from a mental standpoint, like, I know they lost the game, right? And it's so weak. Like, I'm results oriented. So, and you know this, we've been doing this show for 5 years now. Either you win or you lose. But you fall behind 8-4 and it looks like the game is over. And then here comes Trey Turner and he pops the 2-run homer. And I do think from a mental standpoint, the Braves are sitting there going like, man, these fucking guys, like there's a little bit of that. I think when you do the back and forth and the ebb and flow of a game, like there is a little bit of like, damn dude, like we can't put our foot on the throat of these guys. And then Harper hits the home run. And so I think that even though Atlanta wins the game and they say like, yeah, we took care of business, it's a game where you go like, damn it, these dudes are a pain in the ass. You know, like the Phillies kind of let you know, like, we're not just going to roll over. Like, you're not just going to show up and steamroll us. And then in the second game, like, you know, for full not disclosure, but like, to be fair, like, yeah, like Kyle Wright is essentially rehabbing and he gets torched early on. But like, that's what the Phillies had to do, and they did it. Like, so they took advantage of, you know, what an opportunity, like an advantageous situation, and they were able to take advantage of it. That's great. Yeah, I walk away from it and I go, hey, you know what? They scored 15 runs in 2 games. Like, you see that this offense continues to perform. It's the main guys. We kept talking about the big 5. It's Schwarber, it's Turner, it's Harper. Like, they're getting the production that in a playoff series, like, you talk about anything can happen. Like, anything can happen because these elite level guys are playing an elite level right now.
Yeah, they absolutely are. And, you know, and you talk about Turner's home run, but I mean, Schwarber working the walk against a tough left-hander in Dylan Lee to get on base to set up Turner's home run. Right. I mean, is equal. It's lost in the shuffle of everything that happens in that game, but really is a very, very important plate appearance. Okay, and it's him getting on makes the difference, I think, in that spot. Of course, you know, the error that should have been an error, that was a hit, that was Trey Turner's in the 9th that sets up Harper's home run, was also important. But no, you nailed it, Bob. I mean, that's the thing. Look, they're going to see Fried today. They're going to see Strider tomorrow. So you're going to get to see the 2 best pitchers that the Braves possibly have against you. But you hit Charlie Morton. Charlie Morton is one of their guys in the playoffs. You hit Charlie Morton, okay? The Braves are looking for a 4th guy. So if you're going to play him in a 5-game series, somebody's going to have to pitch that 4th game. And they would prefer it be Kyle Wright. I mean, that's why they're trying to get him back, you know? And yes, it's a kind of a rehab start, only 60 pitches. Okay, fine. But that's a guy that they hit him. And so that's the thing. And then the bullpen, you hit a big home run off of Lee. You hit a big home run off of Iglesias, who's their closer. And you sit there and say, who do the Braves have? Who do they throw at you? And you go, oh man, we can't touch that guy. Yeah, Pierce Johnson had a nice appearance yesterday, struck out all 4 batters that he faced, and he's actually been pretty good for them. But I think that was just, you know, it was one inning. They won in the 3rd innings yesterday, you know, and they were trailing at that point. So it's a little bit different kind of situation. But other than that, I don't know. Is there anybody up on that roster you go, yeah, these Phillies can't hit these guys?
Yeah, and it's funny. Like, we talk about the Atlanta offense, and it's unbelievable. And you look at the run differential this year, plus 238. There's nobody even close. I mean, in the National League, the Dodgers are the next closest team at plus 169. Then you jump over to the AL East and you got the Rays plus 198. I mean, the Braves far and away from an offensive standpoint have just been unbelievable. First in home runs by a wide margin, batting average, OPS, like you name it, the Braves do it. And they're good against lefties and righties, home and road. It doesn't matter. Like they have no statistical weakness on the offensive side. There are questions about the pitching staff. And to note this, though, I will say, like, you look at team ERA before yesterday, and I don't know, I'm sure it spiked a little bit after giving up 15 runs in 2 games yesterday, but they entered the day 5th in ERA. So, like, they've been productive, But also you do wonder to what degree, like you're not pitching with a ton of pressure. You're pitching with big leads often. Like you've had the benefit of comfort in compiling those, those statistics. And I don't want to diminish what they're capable of. Like in order to be a top 5 team in terms of staff ERA, like you're doing something right. You have to have some talent. But I agree with you that when you take a step, you take another step, you look a little bit closer, you say like, all right, from a matchup perspective, am I absolutely afraid of insert player name here? And I don't think you are. Like, I don't think that you look at the names in that rotation, in that bullpen and go, oh my God, like if we get to him and we're down 1 in the 8th or 9th, the game's over. Or, oh, we gotta go up against Max Fried today. Like, I don't know, like Max Fried's a really good pitcher, right? Like he's come back here. He's thrown the ball pretty well for the Braves in August and September. His last 2 times out here in September, 13 innings, 3 earned runs, and he's only given up 9 hits. Like he's a good pitcher, but like, do you see Max Fried out there in a game 1 and say, or we can't do this? I don't.
Yeah, no, I'm actually surprised that they have him lined up where they have him lined up. I actually thought Strider would be lined up in this spot because it's kind of leaning. If you look, I mean, they can always readjust. The Braves can do whatever the heck they want because
they could shut it down for 10 days if they want to.
Well, they're also going to have time off, right? So, I mean, they could pitch straight through like this and then reset and schedule it out. But I understand why you would want to throw Max Fried against the Phillies because if anything, the Phillies do struggle a little bit more against left-handed starters than right-handed starters. It kind of negates, Schwarber and Harper and Stott, right, a little bit, so to have it to go up against a lefty, and Marsh for that matter. So yeah, of course you want to throw your lefty. So yeah, I actually, does he? But he doesn't. There's nothing about Max Fried that you sit there and go, oh man, they're not going to beat this guy. They can't touch him. Like I don't think of Max Fried that way. I think Max, like you said, he's a good pitcher. He's going to keep the game close. So your pitchers have to keep the game close against the Braves when he pitches. And when you get to Strider, yeah, strikes out a ton of guys. He's a great strikeout pitcher. And he's having a really good year. But the Phillies touched him up before. I mean, they touched him up earlier this year. They touched him up, obviously, in the playoffs last year. Yes, he was dealing with a little bit of an injury there. He only had so many, bullets in the gun. But, the guy he throws hard. And if you time him up, the balls are going to fly because of the way
he has a 3.83 ERA. Like
yeah.
And I want to be careful here because I don't want to sound like a fanboy. Like I don't want to sit here and say, Braves aren't good or Spencer Strider's not good. I mean, Spencer Strider's one of the 5 best starting pitchers in the National League this season. But this idea that he's a wipeout game 1, game 2 type guy is just not true. He's just not. Does he have that in him? Sure he does. I mean, it's not like he's Taiwan Walker. Like there's a high ceiling for him, but is it a sure thing that he's going to come out and go 6 innings, 1 run and strike out 10? No. I mean, certainly that's in play, but I just don't look at it that way. But I think if you're going to talk about the Braves' vulnerabilities in the pitching staff, which is fair because, like they got to play these games, you do have to look at what we're seeing with this Philly staff right now. And I think you and I sort of disagree here a little bit. Like we had a little back and forth yesterday during game 1. I'm like, this pitching staff right now is just, it's pretty tough to watch. It's like, it's Zach Wheeler and what else? And I keep talking about the starting rotation and what does this look like? And it's been the question for the last 5 or 6 weeks now. And we're now in the middle of September. And I don't think that there's any clarity to that based on performance. Like you might just put your head down and say, listen, it's Wheeler, it's Nola, it's Suarez. So be it. Like we're probably talking about something that has essentially already been decided more or less. But I look at it and say like, well, if we're going on merit, like I have big time concerns. Like, sure, let's set aside Zach Wheeler, but the Aaron Nola thing is a disaster right now. Like I'm sorry. Like I've reached the point where you watch him go out on Saturday night. He gets the big lead against Miami and he just wilts in the 5th inning. And you're like, enough of this. Like you have to, you could be trending in a situation where you say Aaron Nola has the most upside of these guys. So we're starting him in a game 2, but he's going to be on an ultra short leash. Mm-hmm. So if it's not Christopher Sanchez in a game 4 scenario, then it's Christopher Sanchez, ready to rock the moment that you start to see a crack in Aaron Nola, because that's my thing. It looks good with Aaron Nola until it doesn't. And when you see that crack, he hasn't been able to patch it. So when you see that crack in the playoffs, I don't know that he gets the benefit of the doubt to try to work his way through or out of anything right now.
No, I agree with you, especially in the playoffs. I mean, he'll still be given that leeway here down the stretch in the last whatever 3-4 starts that he's got left. He's still going to be given that leeway a little bit. I mean, not a ton. I mean, you saw when they pulled him after 4 1/3 in the last game because it was getting away from him. So he'll get a little bit of leeway, but you're right. If he's starting a playoff game, there's not going to be that leeway. It's going to be, hey, we're getting you out. You know, you're not there. We got to get you out of there as quick as possible. I will say this kind of an interesting thing, Bob. Sanchez is kind of, if you look at the way that the rotation is now, it's kind of slotted between Walker and Nola. So I don't necessarily know what to make of that. Does it mean one of two things? Does it mean that we're going to keep him basically on the same schedule as Nola so that he is the guy to piggyback Nola? Or does it mean that they like Sanchez enough that they would consider starting him and maybe Ranger Suarez turns back into that Swiss Army knife role where you could use him in any situation in the bullpen?
I get it, and it makes a lot of sense. And maybe deeper in the playoffs, you see something like that. Maybe in an NLDS, or maybe you get that in the NLCS if you get there. But like in that game 3 in a short series, if you get to that third starter, I just can't put the season on Christopher Sanchez.
No. I'm thinking Nola.
You're thinking Nola. Like, so you go 2 and then Nola 3.
Yeah, and that way, if you win in 2, then Nola's your starter for game 1 against Atlanta.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I just keep looking at this and like, there's a thought out there that, you know, Taijuan Walker is the guy that you paid to be that 4th starter. He's the guy that has experience. He's going to be the guy in a prolonged series, in a game 4 type of situation, that will get the ball. And I just don't know. I have to ask you straight up, and maybe you know, maybe you don't, maybe you'll speculate, maybe you won't. Is Taijuan Walker hurt, or is he just ineffective?
I think he's just ineffective. I don't think he's hurt. I think he's just ineffective. But he did say something interesting yesterday. And this is why I brought up the maybe Sanchez is going to be your game 2 starter and Nola 3. He says, you know, or it could be the other way around. I mean, I don't think they would go 3 for Sanchez. I don't think he would be, his first playoff start would be a win or go home game. But I do think that he could start. And the reason is because Walker was talking about the Braves, and he said, what didn't work for me was I couldn't throw strikes. And he says, you got to throw strikes against them. There's a lot of, he says, as talented as they are, there's a lot of swing and miss in that lineup. And I'm sitting there saying, okay, well, who has the best pitches that create swing and miss? Who draws the most swing and miss on this Phillies starting staff? And Christopher Sanchez's changeup has got to be up there, right? I mean, Wheeler and Nola are frequently, you know, in their starting. You always see, I think, Codify, Baseball Ninja, whatever the heck they do. They put out those lists and say most swing and miss in a start, in last night's games or whatever. And whenever it's Wheeler or Nola, they're always on there, no matter how well or poorly either of them pitch. And Wheeler's been great for a while now, but even when in Nola's bad starts, he does get some swing and miss. And so when you hear Walker kind of just say that, that's what they're looking for against Atlanta. And so does Christopher Sanchez's changeup play against that team? It's no surprise that they've lined him up to start in both series against the Braves here in September. I think this is a test for Christopher Sanchez to see where, if in fact he falls into the pecking order for the Phillies in the postseason.
Oh, and if he comes out and produces here, then I think it really changes the way that they may view this thing. And listen, I'm going to just give you some numbers here. Last 5 starts for each of the Phillies starting pitchers that are not Zach Wheeler. Taijuan Walker, 5 starts, 26 innings pitched, 5.88 ERA, 1.692 WHIP, 841 OPS against. Michael Lorenzen, 5 starts, 26 innings, 7.96 ERA, 1.85 WHIP. Opposing hitters have posted a 997 OPS against Michael Lorenzen in his last 5 starts. Aaron Nola, I won't go through all of it, has a 5.46 ERA with a 1.29 whip. Not terrible, but not great. Suarez, obviously working his way back from an injury. He's made 3 starts in the last 30 days, 16 2/3, 3.78 ERA, 6.87 OPS against. And then there's Christopher Sanchez, 5 starts, 27 2/3 innings pitched, 2.93 ERA, 1.19 whip, 7.51 OPS against. He has done a very good job throwing strikes. He's limited walks. His strikeout to walk ratio has been borderline pristine. It's been one of the best whips in all of baseball since he was recalled back in the middle of June. I think they have something to think about here, because right now, what you saw yesterday, the way that Taijuan Walker, like here's the way I view yesterday. It was very disappointing that Jose Alvarado could not keep that game within reach after Bryce Harper tied it. But the fact that you played the Atlanta Braves yesterday and you started Taijuan Walker and Michael Lorenzen, as bad as those two guys have been recently, and you got out of there with a split, that's pretty, I'll take that all day, because those two guys right now have been just wretched. And Taijuan Walker especially. Like,
yeah.
I ask you, is he hurt? Because I'm not reporting this. Like, it's been insinuated to me that he's battling something and that, like, we're being unfair to him. And I don't know that, because there's been no admission of that. There's been no indication of that down there, right? Like, you have not heard that. You've been there. And
no, I know that they had that, one stretch last month where they gave him a few extra days off, right? He went 10 days between, like, missed a start basically. But I mean, usually if that's the case, I mean, they describe that as like kind of like a dead arm situation, right?
Yeah.
If he has an injury, I can't imagine, with as conservative as the Phillies are, especially with the investment they have in him, that they would let him pitch through it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, I can't imagine that that's the case. It would be so counterintuitive to everything that they do with their pitchers. So, like, I don't see that. But that doesn't mean it's not true. I mean, it's possible.
I mean, it happens all the time. Guys play through things. Like, they have things that sometimes are minor, sometimes are even major, and you don't learn about it until it's all over. And you say, oh, I guess that makes sense now. But I mean, what you're looking at with those two guys, especially, it's just super concerning. And that's, I think, ultimately, when you're looking at this team, like, I had some people DM me yesterday, a couple of our listeners DM me, and they're like, well, like, I just don't even know if this is a playoff team. And I'm like, all right, like, one, it's still going to take a lot for them to miss the playoffs. Like, we keep talking about these hypothetical postseason series. Yeah. And yes, like, I will allow for the idea that the math does not support that this is a foregone conclusion. It is possible that this team does not make the playoffs. I just don't see it. And I've been wrong before. I've been wrong probably more than I've been right over time, honestly. But I just don't think that this team falls out of that position. But I've heard things like,
let's just be honest for a second, Bob. Let's be honest for a second. Okay.
Sure.
They have a 5-game lead on the Marlins and Giants at this point. One of them would have to. So the Cubs, the Diamondbacks, and either the Marlins or the Giants would all have to pass the Phillies in a span of what's left? 20 games? Like, what's left? I mean,
they've played 144 games. So
18 games.
So are you going to blow a 5-game lead with 18 left? If you do,
that's an abject disaster.
But I would say this: like, people are. What I think we're all trying to ask ourselves is, like, oh, here we go, Red October. Phillies are going to get another crack at it. They're going to get another opportunity. Is it going to be at home, or are they going to have to travel that first series? Like, that has not yet been decided. We don't know the answer to that question. But I think what everyone's trying to figure out right now is, because we have to know the answer now. We can't just wait. Is this team legit? Like, should I get myself worked up for the idea that they could possibly, as you said a few moments ago, get to the World Series? Like, you think that they have a legitimate chance to do that?
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people are looking at this right now, and they're watching Jose Alvarado come into games, blow leads. Sir Anthony Dominguez is a mess. They're looking at 3 of the 6 starting pitching options have been a mess here for the last month. I understand why people are concerned. I do. There are many issues here. And when you're talking about a team like the Braves that have this all-time offense, if you even get to them, I get it. And can I just say one more thing?
Yeah.
One more thing. It is sort of pathetic. And I'm sorry, like pathetic might be strong, but like we're doing this thing like the Phillies are in the driver's seat. The Phillies are going to have a home playoff series in the opening round. Like, wow, the Phillies are so great. The Phillies are 15 games behind the Atlanta Braves. If the Phillies got swept this weekend or this week at Citizens Bank Park, the Braves would have clinched the division.
Well, they still can if they win. If the Braves win the next two, if they win the next two, they can win. Yeah, the magic number is 4.
That's not good. You're spending more than what? All but 3 teams in all of baseball on your payroll. Like, you got clobbered by this Braves team this season. Like, so yes, and I said it. It's great that they acquitted themselves well yesterday. They beat this team in the playoffs last year, which is awesome. They could do it again this year. Great. Like, they're almost 20 frigging games behind the Atlanta Braves. Like, I'm sorry, I just can't hand out roses about what this Phillies team is. Like, if last year didn't happen, which it did, so you can't take it away, but I feel like a lot of forgiveness has occurred this season in just getting absolutely outclassed and pummeled by the Braves in season long because of what happened last year. Phillies don't beat the Braves in the playoffs last year. I think we're looking at this team right now going, yeah, I guess they might make the playoffs, but they're not very good. And like, you know, the Braves are going to kick their ass. But because last year happened, I think we're a lot more comfortable saying it could happen again.
I don't know, Bob. I don't go that far because I look at it and say, I still think that they're going to win 90 games. And my preseason prediction was 91. And I said at the time, if they win 91 games, they're going to have a shot to go back to the World Series.
But it's not your projection. Like that was mine as well.
Yeah,
like 88 wins. Like, cool. They met my projection.
But if you're a team winning, if you're gonna finish 91-71 or you're 90-72, whatever, right? I mean, go back through the annals of history. I mean, that is a very, very good team year in, year out. What the Braves are doing is otherworldly. I mean, you don't win 100 games on a regular basis. And then again, I sit there and say, how many times have teams won 100 games and not even made the World Series? Like, it happens all the time. Baseball's a weird sport that way. It just is a very, very weird sport where the line between fantastic and very good is blurred by just by a number of losses, right? And that's it. And so when you get to the postseason, very often those 100-win teams, I mean, the team with the best record in the history of baseball in regular season didn't even make the ALCS. The Mariners lost in the division series. Right? Like, it just didn't. That's it. I mean, they don't win. They don't get there all the time. Sometimes the best team wins, sure, but it doesn't happen all that often. So the Phillies played this, and I think that they recognized early in the season. And when I mean early, I even mean before their bad May. But I think they recognized in April, we're coming into this without Bryce Harper for a month. Okay. Our pitching was at the beginning of the year, if you remember, was not good. It got good and then it's fallen off again, but it was not good in the beginning of the season. And, you know, they were basically a 500 team in April. And I think that they recognized at that point, you know what? Anything can happen. We could still win this thing if the Braves aren't the Braves, but we know what the Braves are. We're going to manage this for the end of the year. We're going to try and be good at the end of the year. If we win the division, great. If we're just a wild card, that's okay too. We're going to play it that way. And I think that they managed the season that way. And that's okay. Because to me, if you're winning 90 games, you're guaranteeing yourself a playoff spot. I don't know. Is there going to be a team that wins 90 games that doesn't make the playoffs? I don't think so. So I think you're guaranteeing yourself that you're going to be in the playoffs. And then as it's set up, and everybody says this now, and I don't know why if baseball is going to ultimately change it, but as it's set up, wild card teams are at a distinct advantage. The teams that win those wild card rounds are at a distinct advantage over the teams that get a bye.
Yeah, because you're sitting around on your hands for a week. I mean,
and you've probably not had to play a meaningful game for weeks before that too, because you ran away and hid in your divisional races. So like it's okay to be what the Phillies are. Traditionally, 90 teams that win around 90 games make the World Series traditionally. So, I mean, like, I'm okay with where they're at. And yes, the Braves are having this epic season, but I'm okay with where they're at. I really am. I don't have it. And the other thing I would say, as far as the pitching, and you're right, everything you say, and I understand the concerns, because the concerns have to be there. These guys are not performing up to the level that you expect them to be at. So yes, you should be concerned from that perspective. But we have to always remind ourselves in 2023, and it's very different this year than last year. Everybody's got problems pitching. I mean, there is no, we talked about the races a few weeks ago on this show, and you sit there and say, yeah, well, he's having a good year. Yeah, Zach Gallen's, probably going to win the Cy Young in the National League. But if you look at Zach Gallen's season and you compare it to previous Cy Young winners, he wouldn't even be in the top 10 in voting with those guys. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you took the last 10 Cy Young winners and then put Zach Gallen's season up against it, that's how bad pitching is in baseball. So we have to understand that although the Phillies pitchers are struggling, so are everybody else's pitchers too, just because of the way the game has changed this year. So I think that we watch the Phillies and we get so caught up in, oh, well, this guy should be better. This guy should be better. And I don't necessarily disagree that they should be better, but I also don't think that they're as terrible as everybody makes them out to be, because that's what the sport is right now.
Yeah, okay. And I will say this. I mean, and this kind of is a perfect segue right from the point that you just made, which is, like, you look at Taijuan Walker, and I'm sitting here saying, like, he has not been very good. But you look at his season-long statistics, or the overall statistics, you say he's got a 4.30 ERA. Like, is that terrible in 2023, the way that this season has unfolded, the way that what the standard is for starting pitchers around the league? No, like, he's had a decent season. If you would have told me, let's just say everything stays right around there, that he's going to make almost 30 starts, somewhere in that vicinity. I don't know what he's at. He's at 28 right now. So yeah, he's going to make 31, 32 starts. He's going to have a 4.25 ERA, and he's going to have 16 wins, even though wins aren't a real stat for pitchers or whatever. Like, okay, yeah, like, that's a reasonable season. It's probably what I would have said he was going to give you when you signed him. But I think that when you watch him pitch and the way that the games unfold, you just go, like, man, like, can you mix in 6 innings, 1 run, like, once in a while here? It's been 2 months since we've seen that.
Yeah. Oh, no question. And it's funny that you point out, his season statistics. He's 36th in baseball in ERA. That's out of what? It's out of every team. The league average pitcher. This is amongst qualified starters. Obviously, there's some guys with lower ERAs, right? But the league average is 4.40. He's 4.30. So he's slightly above league average.
Right.
Nola is 2 spots below the league average amongst qualified pitchers. Like, he's not as good as he should be, but they're not terrible. I mean, they're just not. It's weird. It's just weird. I don't know. I look at it and say, yeah, I mean, he's not. I watch it, and I'm in that same mindset as you, Bob. I think of it like it's pre-2023, and sometimes I have to catch myself and say, but who's really doing a lot better? And not many guys. There's some, but not many are doing a lot better than what the Phillies are showing you right now.
All right, so I want to hit on at least 2 more things here. And we'll stay with the pitching because it's similarly problematic at the moment. Sir Anthony Dominguez blows 2 games over the weekend against the Marlins. Jose Alvarado late yesterday in the first game. Big-time struggles there. We saw Gregory Soto last night get touched. These guys, Dominguez, Alvarado, Soto, are supposed to be the big-time setup guys. And they just haven't performed very well lately. Now, you can look at velocity and say they're still throwing the ball pretty hard. They have experience. It's just the ebb and flow of the season. They were really hot for different stretches. Right now, at the same time, they're all trying to figure it out. Dominguez and Alvarado have both had injury issues. Like, there's a lot of different ways to explain why they're struggling. But, do you feel like that this is Do you feel like that this is a temporary thing, like that they're going to eventually come out of, and it's just the way the game works and they're in a weird spot right now? Or do you kind of, like, I know we talked about this a little bit last week, but are you starting to kind of look at this and go, like, I just don't know if they're going to recover this year?
I think Alvarado is going to be okay. I think, again, I think he's overthrowing sometimes, and I think that that's where he gets into trouble. I think it's just a matter of kind of getting him relaxed, calm
You
him
know what
down a
I
little
think
bit.
he's doing? I think he's competing not in the moment. I think he's competing against what he was at the beginning of the season and
Yeah,
competing against what he was last year. Like, I think that there's a need for him, and I'm not trying to play psychologist here, but I think this is
right.
real. I think that there's a need for him, and it's not how do I execute this next pitch and how do I win this moment in front of me? It's how do I be that guy that for 3 months was unbelievable? And
Yeah,
I think he's searching for that right now. And it looks like to me he's fighting himself a little bit, which is why he's overthrowing, which is why he looks
that's
like he's
fair.
trying to be a little bit too fine. That's what I see.
Yeah, and I think that you might be right on with that. You might be right on. But if that's the case, like, that's fixable, right? I mean, that's not. He's got a arm issue. He's not throwing he can't hit 99 again, and he's not strike one, strike two, good luck type pitches. Like, he could get those. He's just got to refocus himself when he's pitching. So Alvarado doesn't scare me, at least not yet. And I know last week I said that I was starting to see good signs with Dominguez, and then he went out and embarrassed me the last 4 games that he pitched, whatever, 3 games that he pitched. Yeah, that one's starting to become a concern. And it's become a concern because I'm starting to see that the Phillies are liking Jeff Hoffman more. Mm-hmm. And I think that Jeff Hoffman is going to surpass Sir Anthony Dominguez in responsibility in the bullpen. Contrarily, another guy who I thought was, maybe he'll figure it out. I mean, he's been good at times and not so good at times, that I now am starting to be out on, is Gregory Soto. And I just don't think that there's enough consistency there. And it seems like, and I thought yesterday was a very, very telling thing, and I asked Matt Strahm about it yesterday. It was very telling to me that Matt Strahm was the guy in the 8th inning, and Soto was the guy in the 6th inning. Or 7th, I guess 7th inning. When did Soto pitch? Soto pitched 7th inning. Sorry, 7th inning.
Yeah.
You had Olsen, who had hit 2 home runs, right? And there was no guarantee that Soto was going to get to him, because Soto was coming in to face, in the 7th inning, you got 9-1-2 in the lineup. 2 lefties, Nicky Lopez and Michael Harris, with Acuna in between. And Olsen's in the 4 spot. They could have gone Strahm there and saved Soto for Olsen, and didn't. And they went the other way around, Bob. And I think that that's something that, and we're going to talk, I know we're going to discuss this a little bit here. I think you might see a switch there too. I think Matt Strahm might be more of that 7th inning versus a lefty guy than Gregory Soto. And we could dive into specific reasons why, but I just want to kind of throw that at you first and then kind of talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you have to understand is there is some time left, and that's great. And you look at past performance and you look at upside and what guys are supposed to be, but you also have to look at the results. And so when you look at a guy like Hoffman, like, let's start there. Like, let's start with what he's done. Not only have the numbers been outstanding, but I also love the way that he kind of goes about it. Like, he looks like a guy, and he seems like, not only does the production indicate that he's becoming more comfortable, but you're starting to see more personality from him on the mound. Like, he looks like a guy that wants to walk up to you, open up your chest, and rip your heart out. Like,
he does. He
is a bulldog. Like, and you're seeing that on the mound. And like, I love that mentality. It's very aggressive. It's very attack oriented. He's a guy that right now is in a good headspace. He's a guy right now that is getting the results. He has the stuff to do it. Like, it's not luck, he's executed consistently. And you get to this time of year and it's about consistency. You have to roll the dice. Like, you only have certain guys that you can go to. At some point you're going to need them. But when you just talk to yourself and say, like, who do I trust in this spot? Right now, I think that you have to trust him from the right side more than anybody else outside of the 9th inning with Kimbrel. And then, to talk about the Soto Strahm thing, like, I don't love either guy, to be perfectly honest with you. But at least with Strahm, like, I feel like where he runs into problems is when they go multi-inning with him. Like when they go to the second inning is where he gets jammed up, which is ironic because he's supposed to be a multi-inning guy. And he was throwing multiple innings at the beginning of the year with some success. But it seems like where they try to get through, he finishes a frame and then he returns for the back end of it or the next inning. That's where his struggles seem to occur. So I think that what you have to start doing here is you have to win the game in front of you. You have the standings are tight here. You're trying to get home field in that first round. Like you're trying to hold on, but you sort of, I think, do need to, in situations like last night, sort of test it out and say, can he handle this? Like, and you're in constant evaluation of what you have because you have to have this lined up in an optimal way once you get to next month. So yeah, it's an interesting observation. And it's one that if I had to right now go to one of them to get through an inning, I'd lean Soto, but like I think Strahm might be right there at this point.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Bob. And I did a little bit of a breakdown about this on Friday when I questioned Rob Thompson's deployment of his pitchers. That's when they pulled that's the game they pulled Sanchez early against the Marlins, and then the way they went into the bullpen and you know having to use Strahm for that a second inning, and that's where he gives up a run. And I went back and I looked at Strahm's outings when he pitches more than an inning in the second half of the season. Obviously, first half of the year he was a starter most of the time and a multiple inning guy out of the bullpen until they started to watch his innings really closely. But since the All-Star break, 13 times he had come in and pitched more than an inning in relief since the All-Star break. And in 5 of those 13, he came in first inning was the first inning that he was pitching was good. Went and sat down on the bench, had his up down, comes back out, gives up a run, and usually right away, usually a home run. And so in 4 of those 5 outings, he came in. One of them was a clean, top of the inning, comes in, pitches the inning, great. 4 of the 5 outings, he comes in with runners on base, 2 outs, facing a tough batter. Okay, it's a tough situation, like really ugly spot. One was Soto, one was Ohtani, right? All 4 times struck the guy out. Yeah. All 4 struck the guy out. So when you look at what's coming up for the Braves, and Matt Olson has hit 2 home runs in his last 2 at bats, and you're deciding which lefty you're going to, they avoided Olson with Soto. Now, Soto could have, if he doesn't strike out Riley, he's got to face Olson. Although Strahm was warming. I don't know. Maybe they make the change. Who knows? But they wanted Strahm against Olson and not Soto. And that told me a little bit of something about where the Phillies are with their lefties in the pen at this point. And I think if you go with Strahm, now that Lorenzen's going to be moving into the bullpen, they haven't officially said that, but it's been insinuated, it's been discussed. Now you have another guy who can go multiple innings in the pen. And we didn't even mention Dylan Covey, who, by the way, gave them 2 good innings yesterday against the Braves.
He's actually been pretty good for them, and so much so that he's earned that roster spot. He has done exactly what they've asked him to do. It was like kind of funny for a while. You're like, hey, don't look now, but that's 6 straight scoreless innings for Dylan Covey, and people are like, shut up, Yeah. And now you're like, well, actually, he's just doing a really nice job for them.
Yeah, in the spot that he's being it's a low leverage, but he's done a good job. But with Lorenzen kind of going back, so now you have multiple guys, another guy who can pitch multiple innings. I think Strahm now becomes a 1-inning guy, and they've seen that they're getting production from him in a shorter stint than a longer stint, and so that's why I think he's ahead of Soto at the back end of the bullpen at this point.
All right, well, we talked about pitching almost exclusively on this episode, but I do want to just talk about something offensively, and I know that Trey Turner had 4 hits across 2 games yesterday. He's got, 11 home runs in 10 games or 10 home runs in 11 games. He's up to 25 on the year. He's pushing 800 on the OPS. He might end up hitting 275, 280. Like, he's going to be right where you hoped he'd be at the start of the year, which is insane.
30-30 season, Bob.
Yeah, potential 30-30 season in play. But I want to talk about Kyle Schwarber because I can't believe what we're watching out of this guy right now. Like, he finally yesterday gets over the 200 mark. And I guess what I want to ask you is, before I do
time since May 2nd.
First time since May 2nd. It's been like 130 days since he's been over 200. I'm going to just ask you this before I do like here are all the numbers and how crazy good Kyle Schwarber's been, that whole spiel. Does it matter that he's over 200?
No, it doesn't matter because his on base is what, 349 now? I mean, if you ask any leadoff hitter to get on base at a 350 clip, you're like, okay, that's good. 350 is like good. Like, I mean, that's, you accept something a little bit less if they're productive. All right, whatever. But if you're at 350, that's pretty damn good. You're getting on base a lot. And I mentioned earlier how important his walk was before Turner's home run in the first game of the doubleheader yesterday.
Great at bat.
He's going to break the Phillies walk record. He's going to be probably over 350 on base. The Phillies are going to face some bad pitching here down the stretch. He's got a shot to get 50 home runs. Like, he's going to break 100 RBIs. I don't give a damn what his batting average is. If he's going to do all that within the span of batting 195, I don't care. If you're going to be on base 350, hit 50 home runs, and driving over 100 runs, I don't give a shit what your batting average is. I really don't.
I totally think it matters, and here's why. Because I don't want to hear any more about the batting average. Like, anytime you talk about the value of Kyle Schwarber, there's always someone that says, get back to me when he's hitting 200. Oh, he's not even at the Mendoza line. Like, and then totally dismiss the value of the player because he's not hitting 200. So there is something symbolic about him being over it where we can just shut up that part of the conversation. Here's one for you. Since August 5th, his batting average plummeted to 176 on August 5th. Here is what he has done in the 32 games since then. He's 33 for 114. That's a 290 batting average. He's hit 16 home runs, 14 singles, 3 doubles. He has drawn 35 walks in that time span, dating back to August 5th. That means he's been on base in 68 of his last 150 plate appearances. That's a 453 on base percentage. And he's doing that while he's slugging 737. He has a 1.190 OPS since the beginning of August. And we're still talking about his batting average. So I'm glad that he's over 200 so people will just shut up.
His OPS plus now, I believe, is 125. That's pretty damn good, right? I mean, that's 25% better than the league average player in productivity. It's something else, Bob. It really is. It's a season like I've never seen any hitter have in the sport ever. And I was actually kind of rooting for him to not go over 200 because he would have become the first hitter to ever do the things that he's done.
I mean, it's still in play. It's still in play. He may not disappoint you. I mean, we'll see, I guess, right?
Well, so we talk about magical dates, right? Then the Phillies' magical date is June 2nd. All right. He's got an OPS of 909 since June 2nd. That's 410 plate appearances, Bob.
Yeah.
I mean, the batting average still isn't great. It's 225. On base is 371. 538 slugging, 909 OPS in the last 87 games. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's a truly remarkable run. And, I just hope at some point someone appreciates it. Like, I just feel like only in Philadelphia can you have a guy hit 50 home runs. And I was critical of him at points this year when the OPS wasn't that, when the on-base percentage wasn't that, when he was hitting the 176. Like, that's a different conversation. But when you look at what he's done now for the last 3 months, especially this last month, this last surge, it's totally changed the overall view of his season and what he is. And, I mean, you're talking about a guy that's going to hit 48, 50 home runs. He's going to knock in well over 100. You said it, walk record, franchise walk record. I mean, this is legit production here.
What was the date that you did it from?
August 5th.
August 5th. Okay. So I'm going to go a little bit shorter than that. Since, what's that date there? I'm just looking. Since August 22nd. Okay. Since August 22nd. So that's how many
3 weeks.
Yeah. Oh man, I hate when I screw up on Baseball Reference and you try to click things and you're on the wrong first date and then it like goes
Sad.
backwards. It drives me nuts. I'm still doing it. I'm still behind. God damn it, Anthony. But since August 22nd, I think there's only been 3 games total that he has not had a hit. I think
for a
that's
guy
that
it's about strikeout and walking home run.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of consistency.
So yes, 19 games. There we go. I got it now. So yes, 19 games. He didn't have a hit in the extra inning game against the Giants. Oh no, he did. That's I'm wrong about that one. So 20 games. Last 20 games. He didn't have a hit against the one game against the Angels. He went 0 for 5. One game against Milwaukee, he went 0 for 2 with 3 walks. And then one game against the Padres, he went 0 for 2 with 2 walks. Every other game in the last 20, 17 of the last 20 games, he's got at least a hit.
Pretty good.
But don't have a guy bat lead off. Don't have a bat lead off.
Yeah, can't hit him lead off. Can't have it. He needs to hit 3 hoppers to shortstop and be able to beat it out. That's the bottom line. All right, let's jump into one last thing here.
I just wanted to look. I wanted to ask you what the hell. I mean, so again, I like looking around, and the playoff races are crazy, and the American League has kind of gotten interesting. So I wanted to kind of jump into the American League with you just for a minute. But what do you think went wrong with the Texas Rangers? How do you go from basically running away with that division? And there was a point in this season, Bob, where I was like, that's the team that's going to go to the World Series out of the American League. And now, I mean, yeah, they're a half game up on Seattle because Seattle's also struggling right now. But Seattle came out of nowhere, and then now they're fading again. So maybe that's more likely who they are. But Toronto was so far ahead all year, and now they're struggling to get into the playoffs. What the hell went wrong with them?
They just can't pitch. I mean, they've had a nice little bounce back here. They've won 3 in a row, but against the Astros last week, Texas at home have an opportunity to maintain a division lead, kind of show that, hey, we're legit. And the Astros just went in there and totally outclassed them. I mean, they just beat the Rangers pitching to a pulp. Yeah. And it was like a statement of, you are not who you think you are. You are not us. You're not there yet. And that was the message that was sort of sent by Houston in that series. And credit to Texas for because things kind of really bottomed out at that point. They have bounced back a little bit here. But I mean, the pitching has just been a huge problem for them. And you start to look at it and say, like, can they slug their way past it? Like, probably not. And I think that's what you're saying. But
yeah,
your point about the American League overall, I mean, it is crazy right now. You start to feel pretty good about Seattle, and then you said it. They've started to really struggle. 3-7 over the last 10. They've lost 4 straight games. Tampa Bay looks like that they're going to be very much the top wild card team. I don't even think that's in play any longer.
No, they're so far ahead. It's not.
I guess that they could get to the Orioles eventually here, still down the stretch. I think it's like a 2.5 game gap, but I like Baltimore to hang on and win that division. You think that Tampa Bay is probably going to be will be the top wild card if Baltimore hangs on. Toronto, I think ultimately does get there. They've played a little bit better lately because they had been going through it. That Texas Seattle in the AL West, like that's going to be the last wild card spot because it looks like Houston has possession of it and is probably going to get to the finish line with it.
Yeah, so Tampa and Baltimore, the big series this weekend. They have a 4-game series in Baltimore. It starts Thursday. I think that will be where that division.
As a baseball fan, I'm rooting for the Orioles, and not because that ownership deserves it. That ownership stinks, but I look at the Rays and I just don't want to validate what they do anymore. Like I think you feel the same way as I do.
I can't stand what Tampa does. I think they're bad for baseball.
I don't want to see 6 pitchers in a game 2 of a playoff series this year. Like I'm done with that. I don't want to see it anymore.
But I'll say this is the thing this is the overall thing about the American League, right? Because it's 7 teams, we know Baltimore, Houston, and Tampa are likely going to be in. And Toronto's probably, although Toronto's only game up on Seattle, right? So they're still kind of not definitely. So if we know, and Minnesota's pretty much got the Central locked up. So 4 of the teams, and then 3 teams racing for the final 2 spots. But all season long, Bob, to me it was, oh wow, Texas is really good. They're probably the team. Oh well, Baltimore's exciting. I don't know if they're they're good enough. They're young, but well, whatever. Minnesota's got great pitching. Their lineup's not great. All of a sudden, I'm sitting here like, it's going to be the freaking Astros again, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
that probably will be.
Like all this craziness going on in the American League, and in the end, the team that's going to be there at the end is probably going to be the damn Astros yet again.
I'm very excited. I know all of America is really excited about that. All right, well, that will do it for the latest episode of Crossed Up. For Anthony Sanfilippo, I'm Bob Wankel. You can follow Anthony on Twitter at AnSanPhilly. You can follow me at Bob_Wankel. You can follow the show account at UpPhillies. Make sure that you check us out on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that you listen to your podcasts. And we will be back on Friday. Go ahead.
Yes. Subscribe to Bob's newsletter.
Yeah. You actually know what? That newsletter is getting some traction here. So you can head over to redoctoberphilly.com/subscribe. And make sure that you check it out Monday through Friday between 9 and 9:30 every morning. Takes 4 minutes to read. It's free. And I appreciate it if you give it a follow. We'll talk to you on Friday.